On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, the headline, DeMeco Ryans' defense winning a nail-biter, forcing 2 interceptions, only 3 third-down conversions in the second half. This is what they built in the offseason.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, all the way up in Detroit, still holding it down for the South, Cody Davis. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers for checking out today's episode. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And shout out to our everydayers coming back to continue to support Cody, myself, and this show as we keep talking Texans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Cody, we can always shed light on the negatives.
We're going to do that later.
Scoring 19 points. We could complain about that, but there's no way we're going to start today's show without looking at the fact that this defense had a stellar performance against the Chicago Bears and rookie quarterback Caleb Williams. There's no way we're going to start the show without highlighting and spotlighting Will Anderson, who throughout the week I was told he was not a first-round pick. Danielle Hunter, who made a major impact. And for this defense overall, Caleb Williams dropped back for 37 pass attempts. This defense got pressure on over 30 of his pass attempts. That's the type of night this defense had.
Yeah, man, and that's the reason why we're sitting here having a victory on Monday, because I do believe due to the deficiencies of the offense, if it wasn't for that defense stepping up, man, we'd be sitting here talking about how in the hell did the Houston Texans lose against Chicago. But thankfully, we have a head coach in DeMeco Ryans, who is one of the best defensive-minded coaches in the league. And not only that, you also have a general manager.
We got to show some love to Matt Burke.
Definitely. And with Matt Burke, but you also have a general manager who likes to work hand in hand with his coaching staff. And that's very important, John, because when I was watching that game on yesterday, man, I kept looking at how well that defensive line played on one accord. And I kept going back to free agency. I kept going back to the offseason, especially early on when we started, hearing rumblings about who they was going after, who they was signing, who they was trading for, who they could potentially trade for. And remember, John, I kept saying on air and off the air, why in the world are the Houston Texans keep putting so much of their resources in the defensive line? That was by far one of their best position groups of the 2023 campaign. This game right here, and even 2 games into the 2024 campaign, is the reason why. And I just want to say, man, I look stupid. Here's what head coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about the performance of his defensive line and the impact they had on the defense overall.
It starts up front with our defensive line, like Will, Daniil, Mario, all the guys, the way they were rushing like together and the way we were covering in the back end, that really set things apart for us. So, credit to Sting and Kamari for the way they covered, allowing those guys to get the pressure. You don't get pressure unless the coverage is tight. So those guys covered well and allowed the rush to get there.
I want to give a shout out to you and Big Sarge, man, because you two guys were the main 2 people I kept hearing say throughout the whole entire week leading up to this game was the Houston Texans cannot allow this to be the quote-unquote breakout game for rookie quarterback Caleb Williams. And they heard that message, and they definitely went out there and performed, especially that D-line, man. They held Caleb Williams to 174 yards in the air. They got to him 7 times in sacks. And the pressure exploiting his inexperience with the NFL game speed. They forced him into throwing not one but two interceptions, and I think the Texans also left at least two more on the field. Man, shout out to this defense on all three levels, John. I know we started talking about the D line, but when you take a look at that linebacker unit, especially Henry To'oTo'o, man, that's when you can definitely tell how much better this defense was when you compare it to last year.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, it felt like in that second half, it felt like, man, the Houston Texans are allowing the Chicago Bears to stick around here. And in the past, the Chicago Bears would have been one of the teams that would have been able to make it a game, if not still a game, from the Houston Texans, right? But that's the past. And defensively, they didn't allow that moment to happen, right? Throughout the entire game, whether it was getting pressure from your front four. And this is what I noticed last night. Shout out to Next Gen Stats and the broadcast team, for the Sunday Night Football broadcast team. The Texans were blitzing a lot more than they ever would, than they ever have.
That's that inexperience.
So, like, kudos to Matt Burke and D'Amico Ryans for not just sitting back there and trying to win strictly off coverages, causing that pressure on Caleb Williams to force him out the pocket to make some of those errant throws. I mean, the one interception came because Danielle Hunter got pressure on the edge. And Caleb Williams got away by the skin of his jersey.
I think that was Kamari.
That was Kamari. He tossed it to try to make a play. And this is one thing Bill Belichick says all the time. If you're going to make a play, make a good one. Don't make a bad play. Well, that was a bad play he tried to make. And Kamari Lassiter got his first interception, right? Those guys were in his face throughout the entire night. You also look at the fact that for the Houston Texans, they got the Derek Stingley that they needed. I think that in the matchup between Derek Stingley and DJ Moore, who was by far the Chicago Bears' best receiver out on the field at one point in the game, on 19 routes, he only allowed 45 yards and an interception. Kamari Lassiter on the opposite side playing some damn good football. And they were really forcing Caleb into a couple things. Bad throws, bad decision-making, and just allowing Houston to be in positions to, take over, turn over the ball. So defensively on all three levels, you're absolutely right. When you go back and watch some of the tape, man, you'll see that, okay, Henry T was around the ball almost on every play. Jalen Petrie was around the ball on almost every play. Azeez outside, let me put my hood on for him. Because not only was he around the ball, he was also knocking boys out on the sideline. Hey, you know what? People say, I don't know, why would you hit somebody with a helmet on? When you're in that mode, you're in that mode. But for the Texans to register 7 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 11 QB hits, 2 interceptions, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter combined for 3 sacks. Mario Edwards, who back-to-back weeks with a sack, causing that pressure up front. Henry T, Azeez with 1 sack each. Defensively, they just never allowed the Chicago Bears to get comfortable, to really get into a rhythm. Yeah, they were able to get a touchdown, but in that second half, it just felt like, okay, a moment is coming for the Bears, and Houston is going to lose this game. It never happened. Caleb Williams, a 21.4 QBR, 51 passer rating. They only allowed 71 yards on the ground, 3.2 yards per carry. Caleb Williams was your leading rusher. That's how much they took away the run game from the Chicago Bears. And when I look at that team defensively, I thought to myself, this was just a nasty unit. They were nasty, completely nasty, out-physical the Chicago Bears, punched them in the mouth, literally and figuratively, and they were able to take away what the Bears wanted to do. And that was those big, explosive plays, because Williams never had time. And if he had time, if he had to make the time, then you got guys on the back end that could give me the ball out the air. We're going the other way.
I do want to mention this before moving on. Henry T and Jalen Petrie. Remember, John, going into the season, I say both of those guys are going to be on that pedestal of a comeback season. In this victory against the Chicago Bears, they recorded a combined 23 tackles. Here's what head coach Nico Collins had to say about their growth following the game.
Guys were flying around, sideline to sideline. So Petrie definitely jumped off. I mean, he's playing physical, right? He was active. He was around the ball a lot. A couple big hits there. That's what we're about, physical defense. And Petrie put it on tape. Like, if you're going to play us, it's going to be a physical brand of football. So excited where Petrie is.
I want to mention this before moving on. There was at least one more interception that the Houston Texans loved. That's when Caleb Bullock almost picked off his former teammate, man. But, and then if Caleb Bullock was able to get that interception, now you're looking at a situation where they would have held the Chicago Bears to what? About 7 points, if that. Shout out to this Houston Texans defense. They put on a phenomenal performance. Thankfully,
Cody, let me tell you something, man. You said at the beginning of the year this team could be top 5, top 3 defense in the NFL.
You questioned it at first. Do you believe now?
At the end of the year, when we revisit this team, it's going to be a performance like this. Yeah, rookie quarterback, whatever the case is, but 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, not allowing big plays, taking away what that offense wants to do, didn't allow that ground game to get going. This is a top 3 type of defense performance, and we got to highlight it as such.
But I also said that this offense was going to be top 3 in the league. And after that performance last night, they're going to be far from it if they keep this foolishness up. Locked On Texans coming back with more.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 when you play $5. You want to play alongside Prize Picks community like Drewski, Joe Budden, MMA champ Sugar Shane O'Malley. You can now find community plays under the promo tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. You can now also win 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is also the best way to get in on the action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So again, download the Prize Pick app today. Use code LockedOnNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LockedOnNFL on Prize Picks is to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And also, guys, check this out. Listen, later today is Monday Night Football. You may have to fight through traffic to get home, and you may not have a chance to stop because you got to hurry up and get home and get to the kids and get to the wife and listen to the latest Locked On Texan podcast in the sanctuary of your own home and space. You may forget to get your food, right? So make sure you check out DoorDash right now. DoorDash has a nice promo code for you guys, and it is LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Deliver with DoorDash. Why DoorDash? Because it takes away the hassle of ordering food, getting food to your home. So please, again, use code LOCKEDFALL. That's LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I'm going to start this segment off by saying sometimes water is nice. We all love Sprite. Every now and then you want a little juice in your life. When you got good juice, when you get that real good juice, you don't get it no more, you miss juice. And I think the Houston Texans missed out on not having juice scruggs last night.
I get that, John, but if we being 100% honest, this whole entire offensive line did not look good last night. And I understand that they was going up against arguably a better defensive front, but there was moments where I was just looking at our offensive line. I'm like, man, what in the world are y'all doing?
Shaq Mason looked regressed last night.
Shaq Mason is starting to look
Larry
old.
Tunsil,
Larry
4 false
Tunsil
starts.
is getting too old for this. We are only 2 games into the 2024 campaign. He already has 4 penalties with 4 for 4 false starts. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? You do this every single year. That's probably the reason why his behind ain't never made All Pro. Every year he talk about All Pro. This is the reason why, Larry Tunsil. But look, the offense in general, outside of Nico Collins, and honestly, John, listeners, viewers, I think it's time for us to start having a conversation. Nico Collins is a top 10 wide receiver in this league. We can debate that all we want, but if it wasn't for him,
top seven.
Should I push it to top 5? You think that might be a little bit too much? Because John, the way he put that team on his back last night, he had a $135 for 8 to 9 catches, and then of course he had that phenomenal catch where he caught it with the left hand and it bobbled a little bit, but he was able to secure it for a very important first down to keep the drive and keep the momentum going. John, this offense, man, outside of Nico, this offense was truly disappointing. And John, I don't know, it's because I'm starting to view CJ Stroud as one of the premier quarterbacks. I don't know if I'm looking too much into the fact that, they got Nico, they got Tank, they got Stephon. I don't know if I'm just looking at it too much to the fact that even when I take a look at the tight end unit, and also, by the way, shout out to Cade Stover for the second consecutive game. He actually went out there and made some very important plays for the Houston Texans.
Big plays.
But John, the Texans could not, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, the Texans could not establish the run yesterday. They had 75, 80 yards. Joe Mixon looked the complete opposite from what we saw in India a week ago. And then unfortunately he got hurt. Speedy recovery to him. I'm pretty sure that's going to be something we're going to have to keep our eye on throughout this entire week. But John, I'm looking at it from a situation. I understand that they could not establish the run, but in my viewing of all of this, when I'm looking at so many weapons that they have, I feel like this offense should not look as dysfunctional. 19 pointish, kind of dysfunctional if they can't establish the run. And once again, I get it. I understand how important it is for any team to establish the run and how much that opens it up for the offense. We saw it last week. But once again, you have arguably a top 5 quarterback in CJ Stroud, who also had a pretty good game himself. You have several weapons with the wide receiver and tight end unit. I understand that this offensive line looked shady on yesterday, but even with the issues that they face, I just wanted more from this offense.
And I think wanting more from this offense is not a bad thing, right? Throughout the week, maybe on Tuesday show, we'll talk about the players and, what they could have done on offense. We'll get to that. But I thought, and this is for me, so whoever else in Houston media may see things differently, but I thought Bobby Sloak was out-schemed. And I thought, and let me say this, we love Tank Dell. We love him. But it's more than his personality why we love him. He's not some, make-a-wish kid. He's a guy that you can line up outside and he can create separation on the outside. We've seen him do it against some of the best corners, CB2s in the NFL. You can line him up in a slot and get him open as well. I like some of the ways that Houston is attempting to get everybody hands involved, because when you have an offense like this, you have to find a way to do so, right? Nico is your guy down the field. Go get it. Right now, Stephon Diggs, anything in between 9 and 12 yards, that's Stephon Diggs. But we shouldn't just regulate Tank Dell to the gadget plays. That shouldn't be the only way. And this is through 2 weeks. That should not be the only way this team can get him the ball offensively. Yes, the offensive line has to do a much better job of protecting their quarterback. Without Juice Scruggs, Kenyon Green looked like, a little bit of his rookie year self. It is what it is. Again, Shaq Mason looked a little bit older, right? Jared Patterson trying to fill the role and void of Juice Scruggs. And honestly, glass half full, glass half empty. But for me, I looked at 4 quarters of football for the Houston Texans, and coming out of after halftime, still no points, no touchdowns. And I thought on 3 drives, the Houston Texans needed 7 instead of 3. Shout out to Fairbairn. It just never seemed like out of halftime there was a adjustment to how the Chicago Bears defense was getting called. There was never a counterpunch to Matt Eberflus's defense. I just never felt like the Houston Texans sat back and said, hey, let's get the ball out quicker. Let's schematically design plays that is set up for CJ to get the ball out quicker. And in moments like that, I thought that was an opportunity to allow your team to get going. Hey, listen, the run game isn't working right now. Our offensive line is getting popped in the mouth. They're getting pushed in the backfield. Joe Mixon was hurt. He did come back, but your RB2, Damian Pierce, wasn't out there. Dare was getting some of those snaps. Cam Akers was getting some of those snaps. Right now, we need to say, hey, let's get the ball out quicker. Let's 3-step drop. I got 2 options I can go to, depending on the defensive coverage, right? Let's allow the quick and intermediate passing game to open up the run game, because now they got to respect it a little bit. And then maybe we can have some of those bigger shots down the field. I mean, that touchdown drive, which ended with a Nico touchdown, that was a beautiful. And I think, Cody, you're right. We do got to start having these conversations about Nico Collins. Where is he? Top 5, top 7, top 10 for sure. CJ Stroud with a beautiful dot to Nico Collins on the sideline. The play you're referring to where he barely got it in. Their connection is going to be there. But we also got to remember Tank Dell was on pace for 1,000 yards his rookie year. He is more than just a gadget player. You got Dalton Schultz still on this team, who came up big for Houston last year. Offensively, when something else isn't working and Houston is not able to stick to the script, then, Bobby, what else are you doing from the sidelines? And I got to go back and watch, but it felt like, for me, just like I felt like, okay, man, maybe the Chicago Bears is going to get one here in the second half. It kept feeling like, okay, the Houston Texans will string a drive together that's going to end in 7 and not these long 50-yard field goals, and it never happened. And that's where I look at last night's game and I say, Bobby, you have to be better. You have to schematically, chess game, play some of these coaches on the other side of the field. You got to beat those guys. And it felt like since they were not able to run the ball, I didn't have nothing else to give you. And I know that's not the case with Bobby because we've seen him do better than that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, John, but I just looked at this game last night on the offensive side of the ball, and I kept thinking to myself, of course, yeah, look, the defense played good or whatever, but I just kept looking at, is this game, how is this going to be looked at moving forward? Because I look at it from a standpoint like this. If this were the Texans playing up against a more established quarterback, a more veteran quarterback, a more healthier offense, I think the Houston Texans would have lost this game because the offense, they just couldn't get anything done. And I only say that because, John, I'm looking at these first 6 games of the season as the trial period. Because once they start playing against some of these more established quarterbacks, MVP caliber quarterbacks, and we are looking at this team as championship and conference championship contenders, those are the measuring sticks I'm using you by. And I just view it from a standpoint, man, if you cannot get things going, and I understand that offensive line was terrible. That was probably 85% of the offensive issues that we saw. But I just feel like this game was the moment to where it's like, look, we don't have the run game going. Let's try this against the Bears and make these adjustments on the fly and see how it goes. Because when you play against the Baltimores, when you play against the Kansas City and whoever else that's trying to fight at the top of the AFC,
Detroit Lions, who had 5, Aiden Hudson.
Well, they basically had the same game the Houston Texans had, which, by the way, having a quarterback from CJ Stroud to Jared Goff when their offense was having a terrible time as well made completely of a difference because they wasted a very good defensive performance, by the way. But to go back to the Houston Texans, man, I was just disappointed in the offense because I looked at it from a standpoint. When you go up against some of those better teams, more of those established teams, especially those good quarterbacks in the league, you're going to have issues. Your offense is going to run into issues. And the fact that we did not see them make much adjustments, the fact that we did not see them get anything going with, outside of Nico Collins, man, it was a little bit of a concern. However, second game of the season, going up against the Chicago Bears, they came away with the victory. But this game has to be a learning moment, especially when it comes to these penalties. We're going to talk about these penalties and how that could have been a detriment to the Houston Texans moving forward.
I do want to add this: 4 targets for 1 catch, -3 yards for Tank Dell. He did have the drop pass, and that was a difficult catch. CJ was on the run, hit him in stride. And you look at that Tank Dell drop pass, you think to yourself, man, if he had that back, you may be looking at a different outcome because with his speed and quickness, he probably takes that to the house. But we cannot just limit him to being a sideshow when in actuality right now, talent-wise, he is probably number 2 on his roster in that room. So getting him the ball moving forward, I think, is imperative to opening up this offense. And they cannot forget about Dre. Who is Dre? They can't forget about Dalton Schultz. So we got to talk about the major problems, the penalties on the other side of the break. More Locked On Texans on the way. Download the Game Time app right now for better deals, better seats for concert tickets, theater events, comedy events, whatever outside event you need to get to that has tickets, Game Time has you covered. They also got the new feature, Game Time Picks feature, that makes getting tickets even easier for your favorite live events. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks allow you to just sit back, relax, and let the job get done for you. Also, Game Time offers the panoramic view from your seat in the app feature, so you know exactly where you're sitting before you buy. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Quick note, no John Mechie for the second straight game. He was inactive. And I saw Robert Woods fielding kicks, returning kicks. So I now do wonder, what do they believe John Mechie adds to this room, wide receiver room? He made the roster. Xavier Hutchinson was active. Not sure if there's an injury that we don't know about or something else behind the scenes, but
I know of.
I don't know, man. We'll continue to cover that on the low. But on the highest of keys, 12 penalties, Cody, for over 100 yards. And you got to know D'Amico Ryans didn't like that. 12 penalties, 115 yards due to him. You had a fight on the sidelines. And in some of those clips, you hear D'Amico Ryans' voice. It ain't as strong as it normally is. So I wonder how much aggressive coaching did he do in the locker room in halftime and to end the game, because there was some miscues by the Houston Texans that you just know D'Amico Ryans hates to see.
The D'Amico Ryans that I know, trust me, John, listeners and viewers, he's like that parent that see you acting up and he gonna wait. Just wait till we get home. Just wait till we get home. What I mean by that, just wait till we get to film study tomorrow. Just wait till we get to practice. Just wait till we get to practice on Wednesday. I got something for you, and we all been there. But, once again, man, I truly do believe if the Bears was in a better situation, whether that was experience, health, or whatever the case might be, this game could have went the complete opposite way for the Houston Texans, man. I know in the last segment we talked a lot about the offense, but John, as you mentioned, 12 penalties for 115 yards. That cannot happen. That definitely cannot happen. And here's what head coach Nico Collins had to say.
That's definitely the attention grabber. I mean, we cannot play that way. Like 12 penalties, undisciplined football is not what we're about. So we have to clean that up all across the board. Offense, defense, special teams, every phase had penalties. So we allowed them to stay in the game because we helped them, right? So we have to pick that up.
Yeah, 12 penalties by the Houston Texans, just undisciplined. And this is led by I'm going to go over D'Amico and say Nick Caserio, but also D'Amico, of course. Those two are right at the hip with each other. But just this team has really worked to remove the undisciplinedness. And that was a very undisciplined game. Larry Tunsil, highest paid left tackle in the NFL. If he's not,
I think he's second now. I forgot who had an extension this offseason.
Did Trent?
I think it was Trent. I think it's Trent. I know he's second now. I know that for sure.
You got to be better, man. I mean, for Laramie, and it's not just the false starts too. I mean, I think that that whole offensive line was just not at their best, but you have to be better. Those false start calls are starting to really, I think, take a hit to your legacy. It's hitting your legacy. Some of those other penalties, and I'm glad Houston did get hit with any unsportsmanlike conduct or because of the fight and skirmish that they had on the sideline.
If they would have lost Azeez, oh my goodness,
that's a big loss. That would have been one of those losses. Like, man, now where's Christian Harris? Because of the thin offense. I mean,
linebacker unit as of right now.
Yeah, thank you. But they got to be better. 12 penalties, 115 yards, and you look at how many of those penalties went from 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 to 3rd and long, 3rd and mid to 3rd and long, or some of those penalties where you wanted to get off the field earlier. Now you're allowing the Chicago Bears to extend the drive. Now, luckily, the defense just continued to bend and they never broke. But they got to be better. And I think this is one of those situations where we don't blame the coaches. This is all on the players to be better.
Happy that the Houston Texans came away victorious, and they're the only team in the AFC South who has victories because everybody else are 0-2. But I really do believe, man, outside of the defense, and I know there's some things they could clean up on the defensive side of the ball. We'll probably get into that on tomorrow's show. But overall, man, happy with the victory. But this definitely could be a learning experience, a major learning experience, a major building block for the Houston Texans moving forward, man. And then next week they got the Minnesota Vikings, who I'm not buying into the hype. They 2-0. Sam Darnold, he always starts the season off good, just to end up being bitched by week 8 or 9. But, knowing who they're going up against on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, I really do believe that the offensive line definitely has some major improvements to do for Sunday's game.
I want us to look at this game this way, though. 13 points allowed to the Chicago Bears. 13 points is 13 points. 7 sacks is 7 sacks. 2 interceptions is 2 interceptions. Only allowing a quarterback to convert 6 out of 17 times on third downs. That's a good performance for a defense. Forcing a quarterback to have a QBR of 21.4 and a passer rating of 51. That's a good performance. Only allowing 3.2 yards per carry, 71 yards. That's a good performance. Forcing a team quarterback to be the number one rushing threat for that team. That's a good performance for a defense. And only allowing 13 points, is a great performance. Only allowing, 2 or 3 third down conversions in the second half is a good performance for a team. So, yes, the offense, I think, was beyond mediocre, but the defense was just that damn great for the Houston Texans Sunday night. And I think that's the best way to look at it. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.